Omoya namo bhagavate sarvatilokya prati vishishtaya buddhayate nama tayata om bro shodaya shodaya vishodaya asama samanta avabhasparanagati Kagana Sobhava Vishuddhi Abhishinjantu Mam Sarva Tathagata Sugat Varavachana Amrita Abhish Mandrapade Ahara Ahara Mama Ayo Sandarani Shodaya Shodaya Vishodaya Vishodaya Kagana Swabhava Vishuddhe Ushnisha Vijaya Parish Sahasra Rasmi Sanchodite Sarvatata Avalokini Shat Paramita Paripurani Sarvatata Gata Dasha Bhumi Pratishtite Sarvatata Hridaya Adrishtana Adrishti Mudre Mudre Maha Mudre Vajraka Samatana Parishuddhe Sarva Karma Ava Vishuddhe Prati Nivartaya Mama Vishuddhe Sarva Tata Gata Samaya Adhishtana Mahabhim Mati Mahamati Mamati Sumati Vijaya Vijaya Jaya Garbe Vajra Sambhave Vajre Vajrini Vajram Bhavantu Mama Shariram Kaya Parishuddhir Bhavantu Daya Bishodaya Bochaya Mochaya Samanta Rasmi Parishuddhe Sarva Tata Gata Hridaya Adhishtana Adhishtite Mudre Mudre Maham Mandra Padeso Omo Brum Soha Omo Amrita Ayurdate Soha Om Ahum Tramri Am Mama Sarva Sattvam Scha Raksha Raksha Kuru Svoha Om Guru Bud Ushnisha Vijaya Sarva Siddhihum Om Amite Amito Bhave Amita Vikrante Amita Gatri Amita Kamini Amita Ayurdate Kagana Kirtikare Sarva Kleshakshaya Kariyeso Jetsun Lame Kut Gepada Losan Tempedrume Sasungi Drove Munse Tato Negurj Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Bhardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi drola penchira sangye druparasho. Sangye chodan soge chonamla chanchu bardo da dagi chushe gibe sonamgi drola penchira sangye druparash sangye chodan soge chonam bardo dani kyapsuchi dagi chushe gibe sonamgi drola penchira sangye druparash. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, today we continue with the text of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, 9th chapter of Wisdom. And today we will try to go a little bit through the text, even though it's not so simple. But I'm not going to go through any real introduction right now, because otherwise I get trapped in my own introductions. I want to do them 15 minutes, and finally when I see it's an hour and a half that has gone. Okay, so we'll go directly to the text. And Tukmetu talwa pangwas, kansen number chebayi, namchu gini che na, Tetse namcho teyangni, namcho chirna tukpa mes. Checha nambra cheche na, namcho lani ten yoming, teme chirna mikete, teya nyange debra zo. Nyange debra jo. Kange tse choge nambra dembra yome la choba namjoge, ranshin ge toba dobra jama teye tse nambra choge lo te. Lo te che cha te consumi tope te deme tu che go sami go mi go na shen la yang tsumba tam che deme ba tu nyam go na che te yan nam jo shenge deme tu che go be cher che tuba me bar gyuro shena che tam che deme tu tope tsema te la teni deme tu che gi tsema shen mi go bar ta che cha che tam che deme nambra che ba chene Deme tu nambra chobe tsema la tenye zenda maya war tese tu laryam Deme tu chu gobe ten chu chen den droblo te ngowar yoba mimber chir chu tamche den dun tu tope kansa tela toksin cheba manyambe parla di dembra druba ma druba nyam tu chebe kebara tu chebe shi choje mi sibe chirte te tara sembe lo kemata dembra meba nyambe dremba kebar gyurwe chircho tamche deme tu tokyam lo te ni yang tse ma shingi deme tu cho goba tome gi kyong kyo la gyurshin choje shin goba deme gyurwa ten choje deme Okay. Kansen number chebai namcho gini chechena tetsen namcho teyangni namcho chirna tukpa me checha number chechena namcho lani ten yomi teme chirna mikete teyanyange debra jo. So here we have just Kante Tetar Kunzo Metela Deni Kala Yote Yang Kunzo Shengena Semjen Yange Kala Da Deni Shensem Namdo Te Deni Rangi Kunzo Mi Chite Ngena Te Yote Mina Kunzo Mebani Tokdan Takpara Chawada Nibo Penson Tempayin Chi tar chakpa late ne nambra cheba tamche jo. Okay, verse 106. A second. Sorry, verse 108, yeah. And so, what's conceptually examining and what's conceptually examined, the two of them are dependently supported, one by the other. And it's by being dependently supported by what's in accord with popular consensus that all analytical discernment is expressed. So, here there is one question that is coming, actually before, which it's saying that if you put a question that how can actually phenomena exist in this mutual existence, one depending on the other, they being dependently supported one on the other, if actually it doesn't exist? Because this is a question that very often it comes from other schools, which saying if something does not truly exist, it's been seen as if it doesn't exist at all. And this is something that it's important for us again and again to make things very clear. When we say that something doesn't exist truly, as we have, for example, in the Guru Puja, samsara and nirvana lack even an atom of true existence. When we say that something lacks true existence, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Okay? When we say that something doesn't exist truly, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means that it doesn't exist truly in the way how we see it. It doesn't have a real existence in the sense that what we see as real is not real. But this doesn't mean that what we see doesn't exist. Which means, when I touch things, when I talk to you, when we see each other, do we exist or not? Yes. But do we exist as being totally independent one of each other? Does the things that I see exist in a totally inherent way, independently, autonomous way, independently of causes and conditions, and independently of its own parts, and independently of the name that is being attributed to it? No. So, but when we see things, how do they appear to us? As if they existed independently completely of us. You know, I look at the book, there's the book, here I am, I have nothing to do with the book has nothing to do with me. That's how we perceive things, and that's the illusory part. That's the illusion. This doesn't mean that the book doesn't exist. The book does exist. I can read it. Okay? But it does not exist as being something totally independent of the name that I'm assigning to it, on the imputation of the name, of its own parts, and so on and so on. Okay? So, this is a question that comes again and again. And so it's quite simple actually. We just need to remember, whenever we say that something doesn't truly exist, it doesn't mean that it does not exist. Why we use this word truly exist? Wouldn't it be easier, instead of saying phenomena does not truly exist, just to say they do not exist inherently? Wouldn't that make less problems? Yes and no. The reason why we say phenomena do not truly exist is because when we see phenomena and they appear to us as being of inherent existence, it's something very strong. So we need somehow to make a negation to our own reality. Which is our own reality? An inherently existing reality. Because if we just say phenomena do not exist inherently, still it's possible for us to think, okay, we just go into sort of an intellectual game, and we go saying, okay, phenomena do not exist out of their own characteristics, and so on, but still we believe in it. So the point, first of all, is saying things do not exist as you see it. First thing, clear, clean, straightforward. What's the way how we see it? As being of inherent existence. That's completely fake. So that's the point that is being put very clear for us. Okay. So, but we need to be careful not to go to the other extreme in which you say things do not exist. Okay, so this is the point that is important here. And as we move on, it says, but suppose you objected. When one would need to analytically discern with a discernment which has analytically when one would need to analytically discern with a discernment that which has analytically discerned, then there would be an infinite regress for that discernment as well, because of its need to be analytically discerned. Yeah, 109. Okay? So, verse 109, it says, but suppose you objected. When one would need to analytically discern with a discernment that which has analytically discerned, then there would be an infinite regress for that discernment as well, because of its need to be analytically discerned. Well, when what's analytically discerned is being discerned, a supporting basis for that discernment doesn't exist. And because of its being without a supporting basis, it doesn't arise. That's called its natural release in nirvana. Okay. What's the point here? Basically, what is being said is that one is that we need to analyze things. 2 points are coming out from this part. One is that when we say, okay, phenomena exist only in the basis on the imputation of the name. So if I look and I go to see how does the bell exist, it exists on the dependence on the imputation of the name. But the mind that analyzes the bell, how does it exist? Based on the imputation of the name. So what do I need to do? I need to analyze the bell. In order to understand the bell, I need to analyze the mind that understands the bell. Then in order to see the mind that analyzes the bell, I need to see the mind that analyzes, and then I can just go on and on and on and on and on. Which means also the other way, which is saying here, is that if I need to get to the conclusion that nothing exists inherently, first I analyze the object. And I say, does the bell exist inherently or not? No, it doesn't. Oh, but the mind that analyzes the bell, does it exist inherently or not? No. Oh, but then there is still the mind that analyzes the bell. And like this I can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on until infinite, forever. Okay? So this would be a fault. This would be something that cannot work at all. So, this is the question that is being put. So, making the answer a little bit more simple is the following. When we actually analyze if something is or not of inherent existence, what do we need? We need simply to get to the conclusion that it lacks inherent existence. Why? Okay, let's just add something here to understand why. Why we need to understand if something is or not of inherent existence. Wouldn't it be more simple just to say phenomena are interdependent? No? We just understand, okay, the bell is interdependent. It depends on causes, on conditions, it depends on the imputation of the name. Wouldn't it be enough to see things as they are? Yes. That why are we here with all this story about emptiness and not existing and lack of inherent existence? For a very simple reason, from my point of view. My point of view is not that it's a simple reason. My point of view is the reason, okay? Is the fact that the root of our suffering is not the mind that doesn't see interdependence. The root of suffering is not the mind that says, oh, phenomena are not interdependent. We're not that sophisticated, you know. The root of our suffering is the mind that see phenomena as being of inherent existence and grasp at inherent existence. That's the root of suffering.
So in order to eliminate the mind that grasps at inherent existence, we need to develop a mind that is directly opposed to it. And what's the mind that is directly opposed to the grasping at inherent existence? The lack of inherent existence. That's why we need to develop the mind that realizes the lack of inherent existence. Why? Because we need to oppose ourselves to the root of our suffering, that is the grasping at inherent existence. Okay? That's the reason why we talk so much about emptiness and about the lack of inherent existence. Because conceptually speaking, once we understand interdependence, that's enough. But that's not the mind that we need to generate. Why? Because it's not a direct opposite mode of apprehension of the root of our suffering, that is the mind that grasps at inherent existence. So, our objective here is not of making an analytical game of trying to understand, okay, what lacks inherent existence and what about the mind, and go on and on until infinite, just doing analysis. Our objective basically is actually to get to the conclusion that it lacks inherent existence. We need to develop that state of mind, okay? Because in the state of mind that realizes the lack of inherent existence, there is no space for the mind that grasps at inherent existence. They cannot coexist together. Okay? So, in order to do that, it's enough to analyze the object. So if I analyze, is the bell of inherent existence or not? When I get to the conclusion, the bell lacks inherent existence, and I stay in that conclusion, I don't need to analyze the mind that analyzes the bell. Because the mind that analyzes the bell is not going to appear to me as being of inherent existence at that moment. Okay? So I just go into the state of the lack of inherent existence. That's all I need to do at that moment. Okay? So what's the process, technically speaking, somehow? I look at the bell, I let naturally appear to myself the way how the bell exists to me. I just let it go naturally. And I say, okay, there's a bell, here I am. And then suddenly, I start to analyze, how does the bell appear to me? And I see my own mind grasping at the bell as being of inherent existence. It's very important in this process to be able to see our own mind grasping at inherent existence. Not in a non-conceptual way. We need to observe the way how do we appear. So when I look at the bell, how does it appear to me? As being of its own existence, or as being independent with the name and the values that I am assigning to it? As being of its own existence. Do I believe in that? Yes. Non-conceptually, spontaneously, do I believe in that? Do I follow it? Do I grasp at it? Yes. Then we start to analyze. Is it correct? Does the bell exist independently of its parts? Independently of the name that is being assigned to it? No. And when I get to that conclusion, very strongly I keep it. I keep my mind single-pointed in it until there is nothing more in my mind than the actual lack of inherent existence. Even the bell is not there anymore in the mind at that moment of meditation. There is only the lack of inherent existence. And then by resting the mind within the state of the lack of inherent existence, and when this becomes not only a single-pointed concentration, when it becomes a direct experience, not conceptually anymore, at that moment, there is no space in the mind for anything else other than the lack of inherent existence. Why? Because we are not able, at this moment, before reaching enlightenment, we are not able to see things. We are not able to perceive bell, cup, you, me. We are not able to see things without having the appearance of being of inherent existence. Whenever we see something, the appearance comes spontaneously. Okay? What we are able now, if we have a direct realization of emptiness, first is things appear to me as being of inherent existence, oh, but I know it's not. This we can reach. But at this moment, we are not able to have the mind that directly experiences the lack of inherent existence and the perception of conventional truth together. Because phenomena still appear to us as being of inherent existence. This is something very strong within ourselves. So, in the moment that we stop the mind that grasps that inherent existence and also the appearance of inherent existence, we are not able to perceive anything else. At that moment, there is only the lack of inherent existence. And once we reach that state, this is called the first level of nirvana. This is when we get out of samsara. This is when we eliminate ignorance. We have not yet reached enlightenment. But at least we have no more space for ignorance. There is still the imprints of ignorance are still there. So when we get out of the state of meditation, we see things again. They appear to us as being of inherent existence, but we know they are not. Then slowly, slowly, by meditating again and again and again and again for quite a long time, until we eliminate the appearance of inherent existence. So we are able to see things, to relate to things, but they do not even appear anymore as being of inherent existence. That's Buddhahood. Okay. So, but before we reach there, the point that is being put here is that the process that we need to go through is not a process of only analysis, and the mind that analyzes the mind and so on. Once we realize the lack of inherent existence of one object, and we concentrate on that lack of inherent existence, that's enough. And that's the path. Because all that we need is to generate the mind that is directly opposed to the mind that grasps that inherent existence. And it's not that once I have realized the lack of inherent existence of the bell, then I ask, oh, but is the cup of inherent existence or not? I don't need to do that. It comes automatically. Okay? Before that, yes, we need to meditate on emptiness of many different objects because our mind have also some tricks. And so we may be able to understand the lack of inherent existence of the bell and the cup, but we may not be able to understand the lack of inherent existence of our sensations or of our mind or the lack of inherent existence of emptiness itself. Okay? Also, emptiness is of the nature of emptiness. Does emptiness exist? Yes. Does the lack of inherent existence of the bell exist? Does it exist inherently? No. It also lacks inherent existence. Okay, so this is, we need to meditate on the emptiness of on many levels in order to really understand it deeply, in order to really have a direct experience of it. But once we have a direct experience, then it's the same for everything. It doesn't matter if I am meditating on the lack of inherent existence of the bell, or of the table, or of my sensation, or of the 5 aggregates, or whatever, okay? The final conclusion is always the same. So this is the point here. Okay. Let's try to move a little bit more. Kangi tarna dini de, dini shindu kawe ne, kalte shenwa le tun drup, sheyo ni la tenchi yo, wente sheja le she drup, sheja yo la tenchi yo, tete pensu wangi yo, niga kayang, niga yang ni mebar gyur, kalte pume pa mingna, puni kang le jungwa yin, pume parni pa me pa, teshin teni meba ni, nyugu sabun leke shing, sabun teni tokpa shing, sheja leke sheba yi, teyo pa ni chi mitom. Nyugu leshin sheba yi, sabun yo che, tok yurna, kangchir sheja te tokpar, sheba yo ni kang le tok. Okay. From verse 111 to 115, okay, which is going against the inherent existence of object and subject, which means the object and the object observer, okay? And it says, And as for the likes of someone from whom these two are truly existent, who is this someone? The Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika, okay? And for the likes of someone for whom these two are truly existent, which are the true? The object of perception and the observer, okay? The mind and the object that mind perceives. So as for the likes of someone for whom these two are truly existent, he indeed is on a very difficult grounds, because if it's from the power of a cognition that an object is established, then what supporting basis is there for establishing the true existence of the cognition? And if it is from the power of what's cognized that a cognition is established, then what support is there for the establishing the true existence of what is cognized? On the other hand, if their existence is established by the power of each other, then the known true existence of both would in fact be the case. For example, if without a child someone is not a father, then from whom can it arise that someone is a child? Because in the absence of a child, there can be no father. Similar to that is the known true existence of the two. Suppose you asked, a sprout grows from a seed. A sprout grows from a seed, as just as the true existence of the seed is indicated by it. Why, by the arising of a cognition from what's cognized, can't its true existence also be concluded? Well, the Madhyamika answers, when it is from a cognition different from the sprout, that it can be concluded that a seed exists. What can it be from, by means of which the true existence of a cognition cognizing something it cognizes can be concluded? What can it be from, by means of which the true existence of a cognition cognizing something it cognizes can be concluded? Okay. The meaning here is actually quite simple. Okay? We don't go word by word. We can divide the Buddhist schools into three parts. We have the first ones, which are the ones that believe in external existence, which here in verse 111 is saying, as for the likes of someone, which is called Vaibhasika and Svautantrika, they say that external reality does exist. And the mind also does exist, truly. So they're very, very simple actually. And also when they talk about conventional and absolute truth, they have a very simple way and a very practical also, which they start by saying, okay, what is conventional is something that if breaks, it's not there anymore. So if I take the cup and I break the cup, the mind that apprehends the cup, is it still there or not? No. So the cup is conventional. If I take time, for instance, and I cut time into infinite parts, is it always time? Yes. So it's absolute. Okay? So it doesn't matter if it's 10,000 years or if it's a second, it's always time. So this is absolute. Okay? While anything else that if you break it, there are other absolute phenomena also, but if there is something that if you break it, the mind that apprehends it cannot be there anymore, that's a conventional reality. That's the Vaibhasika way of seeing things. But they say external reality does exist. The mind also does exist truly. Okay? It's just a matter how you see, perceive. They go, for example, the fact that they say you don't see. They go very, very much. It's very similar to our more conventional science also, in which the first Buddhist school, they analyze, for example, when you listen, you are not listening to what the person say, but you are listening to the vibrations arriving to your ear. And what you see is not what is there, but is the lights coming to your eyes. For example, me that I'm wearing glasses, I even don't see the lights. I see the reflection coming from my lenses to my eyes. They go into all these details, okay? Which is very nice because they start showing us and teaching us to analyze things. Then the next school, which is the Vaibhasika, the Southern Trika, they go into another level in which they bring also the fact of the observer. They say, yes, but there is a mental image. We see everything through a mental image. Okay? So here they bring another level of understanding, but still they make very clear that external reality truly exists and the mind also truly exists. Okay? Then we go to the Chittamatra school, which is the mind only. The Chittamatra school goes to another level in which says, no, external reality doesn't truly exist. What truly exists is the mind. Everything exists through the mind. It doesn't mean that everything exists only in the mind, but everything exists only through the mind. So what they say is that, they make an example, we go to a place, a new house. We have never been in this house, we move to a new house. And when we move to the house, we say, okay, this is the room of the parents, this is the room of the children, this is the kitchen, this is the living room, here I'm going to make the study room. And we give the names. Next day when we go, where we say, oh, where is my sleeping room? Oh, that's my sleeping room. That's the study. That's the living room. That's the kitchen. Why it has become that? Because we have given this value. Okay? So what they are saying is that basically everything that exists on the fact that the observer gives the value for it. Nothing exists as it is by its own characteristics. And they go beyond it also, saying that everything that we experience is a result of action, is a result of karma. We cannot experience anything independently of karma. Okay? Which means everything that I see, I touch, I experience is a result of causes that were created in the past. Okay? What is karma according to this school? Karma is the mental factor semchung sempa, which means the basic intention that we have. Okay? If we go to look the karma, body and speech are the pathways through which our intention moves. But the real karma is our intention. So if karma is mind, that is intention, and everything is a result of karma, everything is a result of the mind. Okay? That's the Chittamatra school view. They make very clear. Then in the Madhyamika school, they go beyond. They say, no, the words that you say, the action you do is also karma. It's not only the mind. Okay, this is the Madhyamika Prasangika school. But we're not going to go into karma right now. But the point is that according to the Chittamatra school, the mind truly exists. What doesn't truly exist is the objects of perception because they depend on the mind by the way how they exist. Okay? Then comes the Madhyamika school and says, no, it's not like that. The mind also does not truly exist. Not only the objects of perception don't exist truly, also the mind don't exist truly. Why? Because the mind that perceives the bell depends on the existence of the bell. One depends on the other. The mind doesn't exist by itself autonomously. And here is the example that was being given of the father and the child. A child to exist depends on the existence of a father. But a father to exist depends on the existence of a child that was the father before, no? It's like in the West we'd make this joke, who comes first, the egg or the chicken, no? We have this thing, what started first. And actually, similar to that, what it's saying is that one cannot exist without the other. Similar to that, object of perception and perceiver, the mind, cannot exist one without the other. The mind that perceives the bell and the bell, one cannot exist without the other. So this is the point that, the mind doesn't exist truly, which means that it doesn't exist in an inherently autonomous way. Why? Because if the mind existed in an inherently autonomous way, the mind that perceives the bell could exist without the existence of the bell. And that's not possible. The mind that perceives the bell can only exist independent of the bell. But the bell can only exist independent of the mind that perceives the bell. So, one depends on the other. It's like here and there. There can only exist because here exists. Here can only exist because there exists. One exists independent of the other. Okay? It's like one is supporting the other constantly. Okay? So, this is the point which is bringing here, which is saying, and it's actually a whole discussion about what we mean by truly existence also. What does it mean if something truly exists or not? Okay? From the Madhyamika point of view, something to have a true existence is very much connected to the way how things appear to us. Which means phenomena do not exist in an independent way, not depending on the observer and so on. But also the mind doesn't exist independently of the object that it's perceiving. And that's a very important point also. Because otherwise, when we start analyzing that phenomena do not exist independently on the imputation of the name, looks like what exists on the basis of everything? The imputation of the name, the mind is making everything. But also the mind doesn't exist by its own. The mind also needs the object of perception in order to exist. The mind that perceives, we keep the example of the bell. How can the mind that perceives the bell exist without the bell? That's not possible. Okay? The perception of the bell, can it exist without the bell? No. I don't know.
State. What is then there? Because there's still some awareness, no?
There is the object of perception, that is the lack of inherent existence. What happens is that in the moment of the realization of emptiness, the object of perception of the mind is the lack of inherent existence, is emptiness itself. But it's an experience that is done in a non-dual way, because during that experience, there is also the awareness that the mind itself also lacks inherent existence. So there is not the experience that I am here and emptiness is there. The perception is like the example that is given, is that if I take the glass and the bottle, okay? And I have the water of the glass and I have the water of the bottle. Okay? Nowadays, when we see things, okay, this is one and here is the other. But if I take the two and I put in the same place, now, the water of the bottle and the water, is it the water of the bottle? Is it inside the glass? Yes. The water of the glass, is it inside the glass? Yes. Can you separate one from the other? No. So, in the moment of the realization of emptiness, the object of perception, emptiness, and the object perceiver, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, they are both there, but you cannot distinguish one from the other. Okay? This is the type of, that's how the experience happens. That's what is being described. I have never had this experience by myself, really. So, that's how it's being described by all the great masters in all the centuries that had this experience. No? Okay? So the point that we need to go through here now is understanding basically that phenomena do not exist out of their own characteristics, but also the mind. No? And it's a very important point, the point in which we understand that the object of perception and the object perceiver, they exist independent of each other. Because otherwise, if we do not understand this, and we understand that phenomena depend on the imputation of the name, then will come a question that is, okay, but does the mind exist? Yes. But in order for the mind to exist, it must be based on the imputation of the name. Who is making the imputation of the name of the mind? Then we would need a mind that is imputing the name mind to the mind, and the mind that imputes the name mind to the mind of the mind, and like this will go on infinitely. Okay? And it's simply not fitting. So if we look for in this way, or we need a mind that exists by its own, and then observes everything. Okay? Or We need a mind that exists independent of another mind, which is also not working. Or we come here and we simply understand that the mind exists independent of its object of perception. Each other. One is making the possibility for the other. And as we go through it, it's quite shocking because we get to a conclusion, which is the most coherent of all, but still is shocking, that mind, internal reality, and external reality, object of perception, they are of the same nature. We cannot distinguish so much, really. We cannot make so much separation between the both. Okay? So, once again here, there is the danger of us getting into the view of nihilism, that nothing exists. If all is the same, that nothing exists. It's not like that. External reality does exist, but it does not exist independently of internal reality. Internal reality does exist, but it doesn't exist independently of external reality, which means basically they are of the same nature. Okay? So this is a very important point, because otherwise there is really the danger of seeing external phenomena of being of interdependent and like inherent existence, and seeing the mind as being of inherent existence. We can get to that point. It's very easy to fall into that. Huh? Oh, everything is done by the mind that is perceiving everything and so on. But how is the mind actually functioning? How is the mind existing? And we get to the point that even the mind lacks inherent existence. Because the mind to exist also depends not on a mind that is perceiving the mind. And one important thing, when we talk about mind here, I'm not talking about the general mind. I'm not talking about the specific perceptions of our six senses. The mind that listens to the sound, that perceives the sound. No? The mind that perceives the sounds of the bell doesn't exist without the existence of the bell. The perception of the sound of the bell, can it exist without the sound of the bell existing? No. But in the same way, the sound of the bell in our own reality, can it exist without the mind that perceives it? No. For a deaf person, does the sound of the bell exist? No. Okay. So, this doesn't mean that the sound of the bell doesn't exist. But in the reality of that person, it doesn't exist. Okay? Why can I affirm that it exists? Because I can listen to it. Okay? So, we also need to understand one thing. When we talk about the mind here, we shouldn't keep the idea of a general mind that we don't know. We need to remember that the mind is made of many small thoughts, of perceptions, of our six senses. And if we go to every perception specifically, we cannot find any of them that exists independently of its own object of perception. Okay? So this is how the mind is actually interdependent. Okay? This is the conclusion. It's actually, as we can see, we go a little bit deeper. Before we are just discussing about the bell and the cup and how it exists or not, the book. Now we go a little bit in a deeper level to understand that emptiness is actually everywhere. Okay? Anyhow, I have given teachings about all of this in many other occasions also. We have the two truths, we have the teachings regarding the four schools and so on. So it's possible to listen also to teachings. Si può anche ascoltare lezioni in cui sono già entrato in dettagli su queste cose in passato, no? Anyhow, the conclusion here is that it's not enough only for us to observe the empty of inherent existence of the object. We need also to understand the emptiness of inherent existence of the observer. Okay? And we should have no hurry to understand things. I myself, it took like me 2 years to understand this point, if I understood it, okay? At least I think to have understood something, but it took me like around 2 to 3 years. I had this doubt in my mind, and I was saying, no, how can the observer be empty of inherent existence? Does it need always to have a mind that observing the mind? That's not functioning, that's not working. Something is wrong here. And I was trying to understand it, and then I had a few occasions of debate. Rinpoche told me in Tibet, oh, you make a debate, because I was already I was not in a monastery anymore, so I had no really much where to discuss about it. So I had few occasions of debating in Tibet where Rinpoche said, oh, you make a debate, and I was debating about this point with very good geshes and so on, and no one could give me the answer. And I was like, Then I went to Tibet, went to my teacher, the abbot of Tashilumpo, and I asked him the question. I said, but how can the mind be empty of inherent existence when it needs, because the point is that if all phenomena depend on the imputation of the name to exist and the mind exists, it also depends on the imputation of the name. But who is doing the imputation of the name of the mind? And I was in this trap, And I was debating. Then I asked my teacher, and he simply answered me, one day you will understand. Nothing more. And I cannot insist really. So, okay. And around 1 year after, I was with him studying the text of Lama Tsongkhapa, which is called Uma Gompa Rapsel, which means making clear the Madhyamika path, which is explanation on the text called Umala Jukpa, entering into the middle way, a text by Chandrakirti, which is a commentary on the root of the middle way by Nagarjuna. Okay? And there's a chapter which is talking about the non-existence of the self-cognizing mind. Because some schools say that we have one part of our mind that is always only observing the mind itself, is always cognizing the mind itself all the time. And that's why we have memory of things. Okay? Then there is, the other schools say, oh, this is not possible, and they give example like, a knife can be as sharp as it may be, but it cannot cut itself. So the mind can be the most precise mind, but it cannot perceive itself at the moment. It can perceive only the object that is perceiving. Whenever we observe our mind, we're actually observing the object of the mind, and by that we remember the mind that we were observing before. It's a little complex, but we're not entering into that subject now, okay? The point is that there is one chapter, short chapter, in which Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining, according to the Madhyamika Prasangika school, why the self-cognizing mind doesn't exist. And it was during this chapter that suddenly I understood that I couldn't find the answer because I was making the wrong question. And my question was, how can the mind exist if all phenomena exist based on the imputation of the name? Who is making the imputation of the name of the mind? That was my question. And my question was wrong. Because the answer is, you don't need to have necessarily someone making the imputation of the name in order for you to exist. Because when the mind that is making the imputation of the name is already part of the imputation of the name. So basically, the mind exists independent of its object of perception. No. Not at all. You don't need. The point is that when we observe the mind, when we think about the mind, we are giving a name. Okay? But in the moment that the mind perceives something and is naming it, in the moment that you listen to the sound, and you are listening to the sound, at that very right moment, you are not thinking about the mind that is listening to the sound. You are not observing the mind that is listening to the sound. You are simply listening to the sound. And you don't need to give a name to the mind that is listening to the sound. No one is doing that because you don't need that. That's what I just said, that I was making the wrong question. And that's the wrong question. Okay? So, the point is that in the moment that there is the mind that perceives sound, okay? Sound exists and the mind exists. There is no need of a mind perceiving the mind that perceives sound in order for that mind to exist. Okay? So, this is a point that for me took quite some time to understand. We have no hurry. Okay? But we need to put effort in it. And slowly, slowly things come more clear. We are very grateful that we have many great masters that have taught things to us, such as Lama Tsongkhapa and many others. So slowly, slowly we can have better understanding. But remember, we need to analyze, we need to reflect upon the fact that not only phenomenon lack inherent existence, also the mind, that is a phenomenon, also lack inherent existence. But how does that work? How does that fit? That's an important question that we need to put. Okay? In no hurry to understand the answer right away. We need some time to reflect upon it, and then slowly, slowly things come more clear to us. Okay? But that's, first we observe external phenomena, then we observe internal phenomena, and the next level we need to understand the lack of inherent existence of emptiness itself, which is another point still to go. Okay? But, so we will leave here for today. Okay? But it's already very great that we can simply even reflect upon it. It's already something very special. You know, how often do we think about the mind and how is the mind functioning and never. Okay? And then actually afterwards, really to meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the mind, there is some specific techniques for that, which is called Mahamudra from the sutra point of view. Mahamudra is to meditate on the lack of inherent existence of our subtle mind. But in order to do that, what the technique explains is first we need to learn to observe the mind. Then we can meditate on the lack of inherent existence. How can I meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the book if I cannot look at the book, I cannot see the book, I cannot find the book? So first we need to find the mind, learn to observe the mind. Then we can observe the lack of inherent existence of the mind. And this is taught, Panchen Losang Chögyal Gyaltsen makes very clear in a text called The Root of Mahamudra. Very nice. We even started teaching once it here, many years ago. But then I saw it was too advanced. In the sense that it's a text that is not so complicated, the first part of it, but it's or you practice it or it's not so much useful, really. No? But one day I hope we would be teaching this here. I received these teachings from the abbot of Tashilhunpo in Tibet also. And one day we will go through that text also. Okay? But this is another step. Once we realize the lack of inherent existence of the book, we understood something. Now we need to understand the lack of inherent existence of the mind that perceives the book. Okay? So slowly, slowly we open our mind more and more. Okay? Jetsun lame kotse raptenchi namkar tinle cholchur gepadang losan tempe drume sasomgi drove munsel tatu negur nimo dele tsendele Nime kuyan delekşin, ninsen taktu delekpe, koncho sumke jingilo, koncho sumge ngodrup sol, koncho sumge trashisho. Just one thing. This afternoon we are going to receive the initiation of Chöd. And the practice of Chöd is actually this what we are studying. Put in a beautiful song and a meditation, okay? Because it's the practice to cut the wrong view of the self. It's to cut selfishness, but actually it's more than selfishness. It's to cut the grasping of inherent existence of the self. Okay? So basically, it's a practice to meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the self, which is done with a beautiful songs and a very nice meditation, very powerful practice also, but it's done with that. And so this is one of the meanings. So it's very much connected what we are seeing here, and the initiation we will receive this afternoon. Okay? Oma huntumba lame sangye rinpoche, kyoba lame tamcho rinpoche, dhimba lame gindu rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chupabul. I forgot, I have the commitment in the end of every session to do the mantra again. So we do once again.
Omo Namo Bhagavate Sarvatilokya Prativishistaya Buddhayate Nama Tayata Om Brum 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 Shodaya Shodaya Vishodaya Vishodaya Asama Samanta Avabas Paranagati Kagana Swabhava Vishuddhe Abhishinchantu Mam Sarvatata Gata Sugata Varavachana Amrita Abhishekera Mahamudra Mantra Pade Ahara Mama Ayo Sandarani Shodaya Shodaya Vishodaya Vishuddhe Ushnisha Vichaya Parishuddhe Sahasra Rasmi Sanchodite Sarvatata Avalokini Shat Paramita Paripurani Sarvatata Gata Mate Dasha Bhumi Pratishtite Sarvatata Gata Hridaya Adhishtana Adhishtite Mudre Mudre Maha Mudre Vajrakaya Samanta Parishuddhe Sarva Karma Avarana Vishuddhe Prati Nivartaya Mama Ayur Vishuddhe Maya Adhishtana Adhishtite Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Ve Muni Maha Ve Muni Mate Mate Maha Mamati Sumati Tadata Buddha Kote Parishuddhe Visputa Buddhishuddhe He Jaya Jaya Vi Jaya Smaras Paraspar Adhishtite Bude Vajre Maha Vajre Su Vajra Garbe Jaya Garbe Vi Jaya Garbe Vajra Jwala Garbe Vajro Bhave Vajra Sambhave Vajrini Vajram Bhavantu Mama Shariram Sarva Satvanam Cha Kaya Parishuddhir Bhavantu Me Sada Sarva Gati Parishuddhischa Sarva Tata Gatascha Mam Samazvasayantu Buddhaya Siddhaya Bodhaya Vibodhaya Mochaya Vimochaya Shodaya Vishodaya Samantena Mochaya Samanta Rashmi Parishuddhe Sarvatata Gata Hridaya Adhishtana Adhishtite Mudre Maha Mudra Mantra Pade Soha Om Brum Soha Omo Amrita Ayurda Omo Ahum Tramre Amam Sarva Sattvamscha Raksha Kuru Soha Om A Guru Buddha Ushnisha Vichaya Sarva Siddhihum Omo Amite Amito Bhave Amita Vikrante Amita Gatri Amita Kamini Amita Ayurdate Kagana Kirtikare Sarva Kleshakshayam Kariye Svoha Jetsun Lame Kutse Rabtenchi Nam Kartinle Chochur Gepada Losan Tempe Dremesas Drove Munse Tatu Negyurch